Mic test, mic test. This is mic test. 1, 2, 3. Mic test, mic test. This is mic test. 1, 2, 3. Mic test, mic test, mic test.
Boo, 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 boo. Hello, boo, boo. So shall we gather together, friends? I'm not as tall as Bob. So a very warm welcome to everybody. My name is Gareth. I have nothing to do with Penang Institute, I'm glad to say, which is why I'm here introducing tonight's event. It's really, really, really splendid to see such a good audience for a drizzly Monday evening. So very warm welcome to everybody. And I think we're going to have a thoroughly interesting evening. The reason I'm doing the introduction is that we from Garukdaya Bookshop, and that's our little bookstall over here, proposed this evening to be held not at our own place because we knew the masses would come out in force and we needed a place with a larger capacity. So we proposed it to Wiki Beng, and he very much assented to having this evening. So we're here really to talk about the launch of an extraordinarily beautiful and special book. I was going to say person, but book. But also an extraordinarily beautiful and special person. Gardens of Imagination. The subtitle takes a lot of articulation. The first collected works of InCh, gardens, landscapes, architecture, interiors. So there's the full-on title. As it says, it is what it says on the tin. It features the first comprehensive collection of InCh's garden designs. He is an architect, but also, I think, renowned above all as just a wonderful and innovative designer of garden spaces with a particular ethos, and that's what comes through in the book. The book's been beautifully designed, and I want to really commend someone in the room tonight. I've admired his work for a long, long time, but it's actually the first time we've met, and that's Lin Ho, the photographer. And I would just honestly give him a special round of applause. So in order to open the discussion tonight, we have two presentations, and the session will be moderated by our good friend Elida. So in the first place, we're going to be inviting Professor Robert Powell. Bob and I have known each other for a very, very long time. He's had a decades-long association with Malaysia, and he is prolific beyond words. I mean, he counts probably nearly 4 dozen major publications on Malaysian architecture and indeed much else. And we have some of Bob's books, including his really wonderful 2 volumes on the tropical Malaysian house, and the book which I really cherish as well, which is the Terrace Transformations in the Tropic, which looks at terrace houses in particular. And it's really hard to keep up with him because he's working on, I think, 2 other books presently, and you know, we'll have to have another event just for him. So we'll be introducing Bob in a moment. And of course, our principal for tonight is InCh himself, responsible for curating gardens all over the world: China, Japan, the United States, and of course, Malaysia, as well as award-winning interiors and houses. He's the principal of Inchscape, which is his practice in Kuala Lumpur, where he's developed a very distinctive approach to interpretative design. And then, last but not least, and she's going to be the host with the most, our very good friend Elida Ong, who's over here. Elida studied at the Architectural Association in London. She's worked on as a design architect in projects all over the place in Malaysia, the Middle East, in Europe, and so on. And being a fan of the Morse code, she has set up a company that's called ... So please give a very warm Penang Institute welcome to InCh Lim, Robert Powell, and Elida Ong.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was supposed to be up there. I was trying to hide. Oh, I have to sit here. Can I sit next to you?
You've got the wrong one.
Yeah, very, very fast. Don't worry, I'll do that.
It's okay, what's it? I'm using this one. I don't need it. Okay. H. Gardens of Imagination, The Writer's Tale. I got that from some film title, I think, somewhere. The Draftsman's Contract or something like that. It just sounded right. I'm the warm-up act. This is the main attraction. So I'm not about gardens, but I'll give a background to the whole thing. It was never my intention to be a writer. I planned to be an artist. Then I wanted to be a soldier. But I became an architect, then an academic, and eventually a writer and an illustrator. I was born, I just said that. I was born on August the 27th, 1942. Britain was at war with Nazi Germany. I recall nothing of the bombing of Sheffield, which is my hometown. I'm told that when the siren sounded and the Luftwaffe aircraft were approaching, I was taken down into a shelter. But the immediate post-war years influenced my life. My parents were not wealthy, and we did not own a television or a car or a telephone. There's only one telephone in the street. My socialist grandparents took the Marxist-inspired Daily Worker and the Soviet Weekly. You remember this? The British Empire, though, was shrinking rapidly. India gained independence in 1947 and rapidly followed by all the other colonial possessions in Africa, Asia, and America. Throughout Africa and Asia. Malaysia, of course, became an independent nation in 1957. So radio and books from the local library were my main source of information. I was an avid reader. In my teens, I was into Voltaire, Candide, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, Graham Greene, Brighton Rock, Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, Samuel Butler, Erewhon, and George Orwell, Animal Farm and 1984. Books with a vision of a future world or on a socialist theme. From the age of 14, I took the Manchester Guardian, recommended to me by my teachers. I've been taking it every week since, the Manchester Guardian, now the Guardian. Later, I read T.E. Lawrence, 7 Pillars of Wisdom. I read John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath and Once There Was a War. Jean-Paul Sartre, Iron in the Soul. D.H. Lawrence, Mornings in Mexico and Lady Chatterley's Lover. There's a sort of frisson ran through the School of Architecture when Lady Chatterley's Lover was given the go-ahead by the High Court to be published. And we all went out and bought it. The books are still in my library in Brighton. I frequently take one off the shelf, and the stories are a delight to read. I have one very old book in my possession in the library. It's The Survivors of the Chancellor, written by Jules Verne. It was published in 1880. Imagine, this book is as old as the capital city of Malaysia. 1880 was when the British moved the administrative center from Klang upriver to Kuala Lumpur in 1880. Over the years, I acquired a reasonable library, quite a big library actually, though I reduced it in 2022 when I downsized my home in Brighton. Now my UK home is a small studio on a jetty in Brighton Marina. It's the third one along, the seventh one along on the jetty there. It's 30 square meters, 300 square feet. Just a lovely place for a man of my age. And it goes up and down with the tide. And when the wind comes down from the Baltic, it goes like this. And when the wind comes in from the from the North Atlantic, it goes like this. So it's a flexible house. My A-level subjects were art, economics, and geography. I was good at art, but geography ran a very close second. I love looking at maps. I love exploring. I have a deep interest in maps and ecology. So in 1960, I was awarded a Yorkshire County Art Scholarship, and my parents said, you can't do art. You've got to do something which is going to earn money. Architecture, how wrong they were. But I went to Durham University, King's College Durham, to study architecture at the University, and it's now the University of Newcastle upon Tyne. I graduated in 1966, and I joined a small practice in the north of England. In 1972, I became a partner, and the practice grew to 45 strong, comprising architects, planners, and interior designers. But after 17 years in practice, I was attracted to join academia. So in 1984, I resigned from the practice and I joined the staff of the National University of Singapore. I was 42 years old. It was my first appointment as a full-time academic. At my first annual review, as academics who are here will know, the dean cautioned me. He said, you're never going to get anywhere by teaching. You've got to write. That's the only way that academics get promotion. But I didn't rush out and immediately start putting pen to paper. But it gelled with ideas that I had. And fortuitously, I was approached by architect William Lim Wai, who Lawrence will know very well. And William was a member of the board of advisors of MIMAR, the Aga Khan Award for Architecture magazine. And he asked if I'd be interested in editing the proceedings of a 1993 conference in Kuala Lumpur. So over the next 5 years, from 1984 to 89, I edited 5 books for the Aga Khan. The first one was Architecture and Identity, held in Kuala Lumpur. The second one was Regionalism in Architecture, held in Bangladesh. The third one, Criticism in Architecture, was held in North Africa. And the fourth one was Architecture of Housing, which was held in Zanzibar. So quite a break for a young academic, or middle-aged academic as I was then, to be thrust into this world of writing and editing. Not writing at that time, but editing. So the Aga Khan Award for Seminar in Zanzibar on the architecture of housing set me on a path of exploring private dwellings in South and Southeast Asia. From 1993, well, the exact thing that set me off was a paper by Charles Moore and Hassan Uddin Khan, and they proposed that the ideas on houses are actually passed down from an elite, and you find your ideas for new houses by looking at the houses of the rich, the wealthy. I didn't know whether this was true or not, but I thought it was worth investigating. And so from 1993 to 2016, I visited approximately 350 private houses, and I wrote 12 books on houses in the tropics, including Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and India. You see them all illustrated here. A lot of blue skies, but there you are. This set me on writing. The connection with the Aga Khan led to a commission in 1989 to write my very first monograph of a practice. It was on the Malaysian architect Dr. Ken Yang, entitled Rethinking the Environmental Filter. It led to a 35-year friendship with Ken, and another monograph followed in 1999, Rethinking the Skyscraper. You see on the screen, you see Ken's house on the roof house on the left on the screen, and a later book, Rethinking the Skyscraper, which I think that building must be familiar to. That's UMNO in Penang. I was lucky to meet Ken, and I was inspired by his ecological agenda. One of the most inspiring architects, I think, in this region, and it really set me off thinking. In 1995, Tay Keng Soon, a Singapore architect, commissioned a monograph of his practice, Architect Tenggara, entitled Modern Tropical Architecture. Actually, we called it Line, Edge and Shade. Sellers didn't know where to put it. And usually it went on the bottom shelf because it couldn't be classified line, edge and shade. So after a year, Keng Soon said, we're going to change the title, or we're going to change the jacket. So it became Modern Tropical Architecture, and it seemed to sell a few more then. It was published by Page One. Now, Keng Soon is now just a little bit older than me. He's 83, I think. And it's a wonderful, motivating architect and critic. Love him. I love him. Select Books, Singapore, commissioned me to write a monograph of William Lim Suwai entitled No Limits. We like that title, No Limits. And William is my oldest friend in Singapore, was my oldest friend in Singapore. He sadly passed away last year. He was an extraordinary architect, an activist, and a human being. In 1994, largely as a result of my friendship with William, I wrote Living Legacy for the Singapore Heritage Society, of which William was the founder. And much later, I wrote this other book, Singapore Good Class Bungalow, which was published by Talisman Publishing in 2015. History of the bungalow from 1819 up to 2015. My favorite writers on architecture, and the ones that occupy space in my library, are David Robson. David is the biographer of Geoffrey Bower, and he lives in Brighton. So when I go back to Brighton, we're in close touch with each other. I enjoy his company when he's in the UK. I like the work of Saskia Sassoon, who makes economics and social issues come alive. And I often consult Spyro Kostov's books on the city for the deep attachment to place. I once had the very good fortune to attend a lecture by the late Michael Sorkin, who taught at the Cooper Union in New York. He wrote insightful comments on architecture and the city. I remember one occasion in Zanzibar where he'd been nominated to give a response to a paper that was presented by Hassan Uddin Khan. But Hassan omitted to send him the paper beforehand. And he came into the room never having heard it before. He gave the most incredible off-the-cuff speech. I've never met anyone who could think so well and talk so well without having read the paper beforehand. I confess that even as an academic, I never ever read a PhD from cover to cover. The academic format is, I argue, on the whole, focused on process and not on the product. The language and style of academic format, whilst informative, for me is rarely stimulating and exciting. I love a good story, and that's why you see where I came from, the books that I used to read. I hope this penetrates into the monographs I write. I love the novels of Ian McEwan, the subversive writing of Salman Rushdie, the quirky novels of Murakami, the dark stories by the Turkish novelist Orhan Pamuk. I love the complex interweaving of characters by Arundhati Roy. I enjoy Khalid Hossein, Tash-Or, and Neera Penang. I enjoy enormously the novels of Tan Tuan Eng. So it's this sort of storytelling that I enjoy. I'm attracted by the language of literature. I love reading books. I enjoy a story and consciously attempt to tell a story when writing constructing a narrative in each of the monographs that I've written. In 2001, towards the end of my time in Singapore, I was commissioned by the PWD, as it was then known, to before it became privatized and became the CPG, to write a monograph on Singapore schools. It was translated into Mandarin and spearheaded a campaign by the Singapore government to obtain work in China. In 2002, I moved from Singapore for family reasons to the UK, but it seemed my reputation as a writer of monographs had preceded me. While my day job was ecological design of cities in the Middle East and Africa with Ken Yang's London office, I was commissioned by the huge engineering and architecture conglomerate Atkins to write a book on their work in the United Arab Emirates and China. I was attracted by the prospect of climbing Burj Al Arab and writing about it. Later, I was hired to write a monograph on the Australian practice hassle in Adelaide, and they had offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, and their approach, we termed poetic pragmatism, was instructive. They're now a global entity. Another global practice, Populous, hired me to write a monograph about stadiums in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Brisbane, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Detroit, and London. So that was an exciting sort of venture too. It's a wonderful opportunity to visit all these stadiums in Australia, the USA, and Europe. The monograph did not end well, for I had a very different perspective on the stadiums to the publisher and the photographer, but we won't say too much about that. I was also commissioned to write a foreword for Book of Friends in Singapore and further afield, an essay for the Penang-born architect Chan Soo Kian of SCDA Architects, my essay was entitled The Choreography of Space. And another for a very dear Filipino friend, Francisco Bobby Manyosa, entitled Beyond the Bayou Cabol. And a third for the Argentine architect Ernesto Bedmar, who works out of Singapore, and I wrote an essay called Romancing the Tropics. I returned to Southeast Asia in 2016, 9 years ago, to teach at Taylor's University in Subang Jaya, overflowing. So this is my apartment in Subang Jaya, overflowing with books and paintings of travels in the region. I haven't had a television for 30 years. I haven't owned a television for 30 years. And you can see the television is actually blocked by a painting that's hanging over the top of it. And some of you may know this story about my daughter Zara Shakira. I was married, no longer, but I was married to a Malaysian Ceylonese, and we have a daughter, a 30-year-old daughter, Zara Shakira. When she was born, my wife and I decided, Shantini and I decided, she's not going to watch television. Can't stand the sight of these children in front of the goggle box, watching all the cartoons and talking like a cartoon. So we decided she would not watch television and we should read books, which she did, and she read avidly. Now she's 30 years old. She's a graduate of the School of Oriental and African Studies at London University. And the irony is now she's a television documentary producer. Very funny. It really is. She's actually producing the Royal Institute lectures in London at Christmas, and I think probably the biggest thing she's done yet. So in 2016, I joined Taylor's University as Professor of Architecture, and over a 4-year period, I've helped staff to produce these various books, Stadium Merdeka and Duan Tunku Kansala by Dr. Noor Ayati. I edited Place the Peranakan by Dr. Ian Ong, and Documenting Malaysian Heritage by architect Prince Fabi Sisip. I've also edited The Future of Architectural Education and Practice by Pam, and Pam Masterclass of 2016, Future Communities, Future Cities. And I wrote recently a short essay on Kakilima stories by Dr. Camilla Meli Kusumo. Finally, I wrote an essay, Fragments of a Journey, for the valedictory issue of Asia. But in 2018, I embarked on a new series of, I embarked on a new series of books, some of them over there, with the title Tropical Malaysian House 1, followed by Tropical Malaysian House 2, and most exciting for me, Terrace Transformation, which allowed me to do a sectional drawing by hand for each one of the terraces. I love drawing by hand. Can't stand computers. A publishing company which is founded by Dr. Tan Lok Man. So in the period 2016 to 2021, I contributed to 4 other publications. We're stuck again. Hello, I'm InCh. What you want to come on, do you? Okay. Okay. So this was my next step forward. A monograph of the oldest extant practice in Malaysia, dating from Booty and Edwards Architects in Singapore in 1921, BEP 100. I wrote 2 chapters and copy edited the entire book. I think it's produced by Adaptive Systems. I think it's the foremost historical record of an architectural practice in Malaya and Malaysia in the last century. And if you read this book, you'll follow the development of architecture over a century in Malaysia through the work of this practice. The book was guided by architect Ahmad Johari and architect Yvonne Leong. I also wrote an introductory essay for the multidisciplinary practice Veritas and on the 35th anniversary. And I wrote an essay for architect Razin Mahmood's monograph, Blurring Boundaries. And I wrote a short intro to a monograph of the Singapore practice, Swan and McLaren, founded in 1892 and authored by the anthropologist Dr. Julian Davison. And an introductory essay also to this little book, Chinatown, Kuala Lumpur, New in the Old. Very nice book, lovely book too, and written by a very young lady in her year out at university, Scarlett Kuhn, now doing a master's, and it's a masterful bit of work for a young lady who was in the middle of her career, or middle of her time in university. I wrote a monograph at Archicenter and the progressive work of Dr. Tan's practice. Then, in November 2021, I was commissioned to author a monograph on the renowned Malaysian art gardener InCh Lim. And that is what we're going to really hear about tonight. I tracked InCh's career from his childhood in Batu Pahat to international school in Singapore and the university in Canada, where he gained a degree in economics. Would you believe? There you are. So many people change direction for the better in midlife, like as I did. The story in the book starts and ends with the garden at Minyak Beku, looking out on the Strait of Malacca. I think it's the first monograph on a Malaysian gardener. A few words on how I write a book then. I map the story and timelines in a book. The map changes as it progresses. I write everything by hand with a fountain pen, would you believe? I write, and it's undoubtedly the result of my early influences. I also sketch continuously. So you find, alongside the text, you'll find a sketch looking out of InCh's bedroom upstairs, out onto the jetty in the Straits of Malacca. And occasionally the sketches become, here's another one. This is the sketches done whilst writing about the Penang Spice Garden. So occasionally the sketches become framed pictures, which I try to sell. I draw more maps inspired by the Sri Lankan artist Lucky Senanayake. If any of you have ever read books on Geoffrey Bower's work, they're usually illustrated with sketches by a wonderful artist, Lucky Senanayake, all hand-drawn. So I try to do much the same sort of thing. This is a hand-drawn plan then I did of the Penang Spice Garden. And I draw, and the next one is the garden at Batu Pahat. So the book was introduced initially, it's very soft launched earlier this year at Datum, the PAM organization in Malaysia. And I give insights into the mind of an extraordinary gifted designer. So now I move on from the introduction to the main act of the evening. Oh, yeah, you want that?
It's on. Well, I wish I could claim to have been to places like Zanzibar, because I was asked to do a garden for the Four Seasons in Zanzibar, but the project was cancelled. They didn't go ahead with it, which is unfortunate. Anyway, this is me. Most of what I'm going to say, most of the pictures you're going to see is from my work. And I've been told that I've got too many slides for the number of minutes I've been assigned. So I'll be going very quickly. I'll try, and I keep forgetting things. I'm very forgetful. So if you notice that there's no glue between two slides and you don't know what's going on, that's normal. All right, so that's me. The slides, oh, it's not moving. Okay, let's get away from me. You know, once I was told that rich people don't like trees. You know, as a consultant, that's the worst thing you can be as a consultant, because you go to one of these consultant meetings and the project manager says to me, "Oh, take away all the trees, please. I know you're a landscape architect. Take away all the trees." I said, "Why?" He said, "Take away the trees. We're building for rich people here." So, you know, you get a lot of idiots that you have to live with, unfortunately. I won't tell you their names. Anyway, that's where you've got the trees and you've got the city, and this is where we come from. Then we become agronomists, and then we keep animals, and then we come to here. So this is the evolution. We're evolving somewhere, and we always assume that we're always getting better, but obviously not always so. So I don't know what that's all about. And biophilia, that's what I think. This word was invented a long time after I was born, and I think it was invented very recently. And I came across this word, and I was once told to talk about it, so here you are. Biophilia, I suppose, means loving nature, which, you know, and there's all these big words like biodiversity and sustainability. You know, these are big words that I try and absorb into my design, because you have to approach design from somewhere. So this is what it is: biodiversity, internet connectivity of all life forms, and sustainability, how you're going to go to the next generation, right? So this, what is diversity? This is what it is. You have to read very quickly because I'm going on. Okay, incredible variety of life forms, how everything's related and how everything falls apart. Now that's biodiversity to me. I don't know what it is to anybody else. And sustainability means live to living things, don't cut down trees, and what we're leaving for future generations. So that's what it is. And biophilia is, and these three work together. You love nature, you have biodiversity, you have sustainability. Otherwise, yeah, what's the point? We all die. Anyway, it starts with the humble fly and the mosquitoes, because that's what we always think. Biodiversity, we like biodiversity, but we hate flies and mosquitoes. Let's get rid of them. But unfortunately, these things eat them, so I grow them to eat the other things. And there you are, you know. And one eats the other. Deep breathing. Okay. So everything is related. There you are. This is the web of life. And this is a dragonfly eating a fish. And you would never imagine that something that flies could eat a fish, but of course it lives underwater when it's young. Is biodiversity that we're creating sustainable? In college, okay. You know, I think the word for that is it has to remain diverse and productive indefinitely. So that's what, as landscape people, that's what we're trying to create. It's not just a beautiful thing, which it is as well, but this is very important that we we do this. So this is Malaysia, and this is the different levels of canopy that has different animals that live there. So this is Malaysia, and from 71% to 45% forest cover. And, we only have the highlands left. We had hardly any lowland forest left. That's why elephants have nowhere to live. And, I saw these things when I was young, live ones, but we're told that they're now extinct, which is rather sad. They're the most beautiful thing in the world. If you look, how, I'm not being a racist here, but how little African children look so cute, right? A baby one of these is the animal version of little black Africans because it's covered in woolly hair. So 3 applications of, so this is about how biophilic design, and what is biophilic design is trying to bring nature into our design, okay? And there's direct connection, this is how we connect to nature, and these are my work on how you integrate the nature with the design. We designed that house, for example, that, bringing nature in, bringing the living spaces out into nature. And where you can't bring, this pond is fed by a natural stream. So the stream is brought right into the heart of the thing. And these rocks and the view. And these are other but non-direct experiences of nature, which is all these things, movement, these sorry, reflection, scent, color, shadows, shadows. Shadows are very important in landscape because, particularly when I'm working in some foreign country like Japan or England, because, we don't realize in Malaysia what the difference is. When the sun is very low in autumn, the shadows are very long. And it's really incredible when you go to those northern countries, how that can be such an important part of your design. So that is space. How you define the space, how you create the space, light, how you curate the light, what do you light, what do you allow people to see, how do you deal with natural lighting, okay, or unnatural ones. This is, and then indirect connection is where you bring material in, the materiality. So you bring rocks and stones, and for example, on the right, no matter what happens, natural material, I think the human is very connected to the material. You have natural rocks, for example. I hate using artificial things, but I know a friend who has a timber wall right in front of the door, and he tells me that everybody that comes in must touch that thing, because it brings you to a relationship with nature. So I use a lot of different natural stones. This is tea stones. We did it in Sri Lanka. It's an antique tea stones, furniture that is made from timber and timber houses, which we do, and bamboo. Now we did this one. Sorry? This one? Oh yeah, it's in a condominium. I was very lucky because they allowed me to build it. And most condominiums say, hey, too expensive. Don't go and spend that money, right? But they allowed me to build it. I'm so happy. And so this is about human spatial response, how we respond to space, and how we like to be in a higher area looking over different areas. So we create height, we create drama, so that, and height looking, really serving right in front of me. And the Chinese do that. I mean, Chinese say that it's better to live on a hill looking overlooking sea, simply because it's a protective area. You feel protected. The back you're protected, and in the front you can see your enemies coming. So that's what. So these are some of my projects. This is an interesting project. I never got the funds to do what I had designed, but what we did was, this was on a 13th floor of a condominium. We designed different water bodies. So you've got streams, you've got deep water, you've got calm water, you've got everything in it. We designed a forest in it. on top of it, and we tried to link this to the ground level so that the birds and animals and insects can have, is able to come to it. So this is it's built, and so we've got that. You see the water in different forms. We built that stream, that waterfall. And project number 2 is, this is a private residence. And we planted this tree. You see all that flower. You might see all that red stuff. It's flowers. And every year, this Barringtonia would flower, the entire tree would be covered in flower, and then you drop on the water. And I love it when the whole entire pond is covered in red. So this is the plant palette for that. You don't want to know about that. So these are all the trees that we planted and the condominium. And we decided to make this on the roof. I had to convince the client. It took me a long while, but they have such a good view of a forested area in front, and this was in front of the bedroom. And I said, please do it. Oh, no, it's too expensive. Then finally they relented and let me do that, and we did. We designed the furniture, we designed the pavilion, we designed the whole thing. And this is a water pavilion. It actually turned out quite well. All right. Project number 3. Oh, this right. So this is the house that Bob alluded to. This is a very long time ago. I was, in the old days, I was very romantic about these things. So I wanted to make things out of only natural materials. So we had a ATAP roof, but obviously after years of living there, the ATAP rotted. And this was an old Malay house, which I moved, a 100-year-old one. And this was the garden itself. And this is where the red lines in between is where the garden is. And on the left is a natural garden, a natural forest that still exists. So this is what we did, and we divided the spaces. And this is me. And when I was young, I was obsessed with animals. And I acquired this parrot. And this parrot was a remarkable animal. I think he's more intelligent than a child. And he's always sitting on my shoulder. When I come back in the afternoon, he'd live in a mango tree. And when I come back, he would squeak and then flop on my shoulder. And he was so attached to me, but anybody that comes near me when he's sitting on my shoulder, he'll bite them. So his name is Jaws. So Jaws finally, I think, and this is all the animals that my children were accosted with. I mean, I'll bring them from the garden and say, hey, wake up, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Bleary-eyed children, we had to look at pangolins and so on and so forth. It's just wonderful because, remember the thing about society and biodiversity. That's what I want to do in my own garden, that I can actually build a garden that allows for all the birds and animals to live and yet produce food for the family and also produce a beautiful garden for people to visit. So, that these are some of course, that's my parrot, but the rest of them are natural. When my tree grew up, all the hornbills started coming. And these are the plants that I grew. And this is the butterflies, the amphibians. Oh, this fellow is a nuisance, but he's there. The coal that, this coal that migrates from the north to the south. So because I'm in this promontory, there's a lot of birds that migrate north and south, and it's really interesting. So this is my squirrel on the right. It's the giant black. I think you have them in Penang, but you seldom find them in people's garden. These are the snakes. I love snakes. My garden actually was bitten by the one on the right, and it was a good thing he had gloves on. He told me, I said, take him to the hospital. It was in KL. I told the manager, take him. Oh, no, he doesn't want to go to the hospital. I said, take him to the hospital. And he didn't want to go to the hospital. And his arm started getting numb. And he was, take me to the hospital. And they took him to the hospital. But because of the gloves, there was very little venom that actually, he was infected with little venom. And he survived. Yeah. So I don't know whether you know what this one is. I built my water feature, and this fellow showed up. It's a Florida red-eared slider, which is a foreigner, and it's invaded all our water bodies. But he just showed up and refused to leave. And he started eating all my plants, right? All my water plants were all gone, and the fish. So I moved him, and this fellow is very clever. I moved him about 200, 300 yards away, and a few days later, he shows up again in my pond. And I've done it several times. And he's so smart. Tortoises are not stupid, right? We always think they're stupid, but he recognizes me because I feed him. So when I'm there, he'll come up. When somebody else shows up, he goes and hides because they know they're going to catch him and put him somewhere else. There he is, hiding, only his eyes showing. Okay, strategies. So I'm trying to do this strategy. Strategy is reforesting. I did patches of forest and then connect the forest with the natural environment. And that's very important because it is important because of the microbes. You need the microbes. The microbes is the building block for everything else. If you don't have the microbes, you don't have a good garden. So organic farming, that's what I do. I eat all my, and then reusing of secondary timber, which is I do. Then I build my garden. And then I make my own fertilizer and my own compost. It's incredible if you make your own fertilizer. Everything grows so well. I do not use 1 ounce, and I have not used 1 ounce of insecticide in the last 50 years or 30 years. And everything just thrives. Of course, I allow the insects to eat things because that's part of the building block, because no insects, no birds. And no predators, a lot of mosquitoes. So you have to work out the balance, right? So this is water catchment. I catch 100% of my water. I've got a 40,000 liter tank, and everything from my roof comes into long, filtration systems, and it all feeds into my 40,000 liters. So I never run out of water. So this is by a pond. That's to grow dragonflies. And dragonflies is there to eat mosquitoes. And everybody says, oh, InCh, everything you design has a lot of mosquitoes. And I said, no, everything I design has no mosquitoes. On the contrary. So this is me growing this is my garden. So, it's a relationship. You have to create your beautiful garden. But at the same time, you allow nature. I have a beautiful film of the monkeys swimming in this long thing. They treated that at the Olympics pool. Oh, these are my chickens and my guinea fowl. And the chickens are so funny. I started with four I am Hutan. And I ended up, they were breeding very fast, and I had about 30. And I said, let them out. And my gardener said, no, they'll run away. I said, they won't run away. So we let out 5, and they didn't come back that night. And the gardener said, I told you. And then the next morning, it came back. They came back, and we let them in, and they refused to go out again, ever. They know what life is like. It's like children. You let them go and say, go and explore the world. And they're back at your front door the next day. Anyway, these produce eggs for me, and this is my garden. I try and make it as beautiful as I can, using all the techniques that are available to landscape architects. This is the house, again, totally made of second-hand timber. This is the other house. I think this is half an hour, no? Right. So this is my collection of palms. I've got a big collection of palms from all over the world. This is a view. And I always like that because, if you have a view of the sea and you have nothing in front of you, it always feels a bit lonely. But if you've got that, you've got the little village at the end, you always feel that there's somebody around. It's quite so lonely. This is the animals, and this is the plants and connections. Oh, some more. So again, back to this connection thing. Everything has to be connected. And we've got all this work in KL. I wish that all the green in KL can be connected in this way. So we have an entire web. We need that because we're destroying everything. So let's try and connect everything up. A garden, this is a book, Now the plug. So I'm going to just show you pictures, and I'm going to shut up. So this is the book. These are some of the pictures. This is why you should buy the book. This was, I'm not shutting up because this was created in Japan. I wanted to do a Japanese garden that had a soul. And this is all about world peace. And it's called Eye to Eye. And that's, you see this as a dry garden, but there's a beautiful garden behind. So, of course, this is just as beautiful, dry. But if you see eye to eye, you can enter paradise, the whole idea of the Islamic paradise. So this is in America. This is in Singapore. There's a story to this. I was designing the new bird park in Mandai, and I wanted to, because, in northern Thailand, there's all these rice fields, and we were having pheasants. So I said, what we need to do is do these rice fields. And they said, oh, no, we can't grow rice. I said, you can't grow rice? Everybody around you grow rice. So I decided with this garden in Singapore, I'm going to grow rice vertically just to show them. And I've got vertical rice. So this is a womb, because I always feel that I want to get back to my mother's womb. I hate being out here, So you're out there, you're in the womb, everything's around you, it's so serene. You go there and you lie down, and you look up, and nobody's there to disturb you. Right? This one, I don't know what it's called. This is this one is interesting because this is all about nostalgia for Southeast Asia when you're in China. Nostalgia for China when you're in Southeast Asia. This is all made in bamboo. This is my attempt at reinterpreting the Chinese garden. This is a movable garden. Everything moves, and this I really like. This was called the living batik, because I took that pattern from the Megamendung, which is an Indonesian cloud pattern. But actually it doesn't come from Indonesia, it came from China, and it went east to Japan. You get this pattern in Japan. And then it was brought to Cirebon by some Chinese traders in the 1800s. And they started making this pattern, and it becomes ubiquitous. So I took this to France because I knew that the French like exotic things. So I've got all these clouds floating above the water, and the yin and yang, because you've got the white and the black, the land and the water, and then you've got the whole round thing that portrays eternity, and you've got this thing which most religions have, this thing about circumambulation. If you have Islamic, the Muslims have this circumambulation around Kaaba. The Buddhists have this, most religions have this thing, because obviously it brings you into yourself if you keep walking and walking around an object. So I thought that this whole thing need to be spiritual as well as physical. These are some of my other work for people who have money that like trees. This one is mine. We did a development in Sri Lanka, and we did the architecture landscape, and as well as the interiors. And this I like very much, because in winter this is what my garden looks like in Hokkaido. These are other work. This one I like. We made this, we wove this like a huge basket. So what I'm always trying to do is do things out of the box. And this is recent. And that's me, young, old, sitting down, standing up. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope I didn't bore you. Do we have to take this on? I told you, half an hour, right? I could have done it shorter if you hadn't. Do I have to take this off because we seem to echo off each other? I think you'd better take it off. I think we should, because Otherwise, we echo off each other. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hello. Okay. Okay. InCh. It's a bit too fast. Yeah. So InCh was sharing with us 3 projects specifically, but there's more in the book and beautiful photos. But before we go to InCh, I'd just like to quickly ask Robert, Bob, so how many notebooks in your beautiful handwriting and sketches that you produce for InCh, particularly for InCh book? How many notebooks and sketches that you produce for InCh books?
You're not good, Danny, I'm sorry.
How many pictures did you draw for this book?
How many pictures?
Yeah, did you draw?
How many photographs?
No, pictures you drew.
I drew, okay. Not enough, actually, but yeah, I like to draw as I go along, and it's what all architects were trained to do, and it's helpful in understanding
The thought
the
process,
design.
yeah.
It's helpful in understanding things like leaf structure. It's helpful in understanding concepts like borrowed design, borrowed landscape. It's an old Chinese and a Japanese way of design to use the landscape and bring it into the foreground. And by illustrating these things, I understand them better.
Yeah, I've seen your notebooks. They're
Yeah.
beautiful.
And there's some extraordinary views. One of the difficulties in this project was that a lot of InCh's work was in show gardens in Japan, in China, in USA, in Europe. And unfortunately, show gardens are destroyed the moment they're finished. It's like a stage design. The stage is there, and then the next morning it's gone. I had to imagine those, of course. But the projects that you've done, I was able to see how, by sketching, how you had used these concepts of choreography, spatial choreography. In fact, that's something that architects think about, urban design, spatial choreography, surprise, coming across something unexpectedly, and how that excites you. And I think you use those concepts as well.
Everything excites me. It's my turn.
No, my turn to ask question. Okay, so closer to home here is the Tropical Spice Garden. Rebecca is with us today. So it celebrates 20 years anniversary this year. And yourself was there yesterday. How was it? What did you feel being back there 20 years later?
Well, the first thing I felt was that I don't believe that I built it 20 years ago, because I don't believe that I'm as old as I am. That was the first thing that crossed my mind. But I must say that they have, I mean, Rebecca's here, she knows, because she was the grandmother of the garden. that it's remarkably well kept. They have done things since I left 20 years ago. Lovely things. Like I didn't see the Poison Garden this time, but when I saw the Poison Garden last time, I was highly impressed. So they've done beautiful things.
So what do you think InCh today will tell InCh 20 years ago?
Well, you're talking about InCh 20 years ago.
Yeah.
My God, the 20-year-old ago InCh. You see, I always think that I should have started my career 20 years before I started it, because I was a lot younger then, and I wouldn't be as old as I am when I get to where I am. The problem is getting old is that you can't, you know that your amount of time allotted to you is finite, and you've got so many million things you want to do, and you've got so little time. It's just like that talk. I had to rush, right? But I'm just amazed at the, okay, I've always wanted to do certain things. I wanted to design a resort. I want to do this. I want to do that. And nobody's ever asked me when I was young and had the energy. Now that I'm old and decrepit, everybody's coming to my door and saying, can you do this? Can you do that? Well, I don't know. I suppose it's part and parcel of life.
All right, to Robert.
What did you ask? Did I answer your question?
No. Yes,
What did you ask?
Now, to Robert. Okay, you have worked with many architects, including landscape architect, right? And you have met Jeffrey Bauer too. So the more time you spend with InCh, right, and peeling layers and layers of InCh as he is. So what do you discover of him as a designer? And as a gardener?
You know, writing a I've done what, about half a dozen monographs now, and you learn something by every step of the way. I won't say it was an easy assignment to write, because you know when people are very involved in what they're doing, they will change their mind every day. They're coming with a new story every day, and you have to respond to this. And I have to get used to InCh having a different idea. We argued a lot about your child. You're saying, don't tell them about that. Don't tell them about that. But I discovered things that there's a great moral message that InCh puts over. He puts, in things like eye to eye, a garden that is eye to eye, is exploring how peace can only come through people seeing eye to eye. How do you express that in a garden? You've got to be able to do it, and somebody walks into that garden, they go, we've got it. We understand what you're talking about. If somebody wants to express the womb, you've got to be able to, somebody walks into it, and as you said, people would break down crying because they felt what you had done. And I think this is where the gardens of imagination came good for me. I understood through that these gardens actually meant something. And when I say, you don't want me to say a lot about your beliefs in Christianity and so on. You would always say, come on, I'm not, but I believe what you do is sometimes reveals the very essence of what you want to tell people. And that comes from your childhood and your mother and your father and your Presbyterian background and so on. He'd say, don't tell about the Presbyterian all. But I said, but it actually comes true in the messages that you put through your gardens. That's what I learned from him. That he actually, it's not simple. Sometimes there's a very deep message in there, and I like that. Good one.
Can I respond to that? I was a bit worried that I'll be laid bare for all the world to see. Everybody knows everything about every detail about my life, and I'm really, in a way, quite a private person. Would you say that? And at least I don't want to be, feel so naked in public. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like me. I think you have less of a problem with that because you stand up there and tell everything about every detail of your life. Not every detail, but you're happy to share I'm happy to share my life, people, but through the filter of my mouth, through my brain. So I'll tell them things, but I'll tell them through a particular filter. Anyway, it's out, so it's okay. And everybody seems to enjoy it. So
the other thing that in writing this monograph is I wanted it to be InCh's words, not so much my words. I was just conveying and so I took something from a Jeffrey Bauer book. David Robson wrote a book about Jeffrey Bauer, and interspersed in the text are quotations by Jeffrey Bauer. And I said to the book designer, Alex Chu, I want to do the same thing here. I want InCh's words to appear at different spots. So that when you read the book on different levels, you look at the pictures, that's the first thing most people look at. Then they look at the quotations, your quotations, and then finally they look at what I've got to write. But, but it was important that your words came through and that you very often put it very nicely and very delicately and very forcefully what you felt you were trying to achieve in the garden. I think that was the important thing about it. And you see it in the book. It's a beautiful book, but it's about him, not about me. It's very good.
So would you say then?
I just hope that I don't come across being exceedingly stupid with my quotes.
Yeah. Okay. Back to Bob. Would you say then working on this book is a fresh challenge for you? Because working on buildings is different. The spatial experience is different, right? Working with landscape.
I'm sorry, say again.
Okay. Would you say that working on this book is a fresh challenge for you?
For me,
Yeah, because as we are working with garden, the elements, the fluidity of working on the landscape is different to working on the buildings.
I think I'm an architect, but an urban designer. And I think all those principles of urban design are also relevant in some ways to garden design. I use the notion of choreography, spatial choreography. I like the idea of how it might, in a way, relate to modern dance. You go through different postures, and people relate to each other in different ways throughout a sequence of modern dance. It's something like this in garden. When you walk around your garden at Batu Pahat, it really is an extraordinary experience, apart from the mosquitoes. You don't suffer at all from mosquitoes. They all head for me. But anyway, you walk and you experience so many different feelings as you're walking through that garden. I enjoy it enormously. He has a magical touch, and I've wandered through most of your other gardens, other than the show gardens. And again, it is this constant imagination that I'm impressed by.
Okay. All right, InCh, would you comment on this? This is from your book. Gardeners live to a different rhythm of life.
Garden is what?
Gardeners live to a different rhythm of life.
Did I say that?
Yes.
Well, if you're a gardener, you have to understand everything about nature, about seasons, even when there's very little changes in seasonal variation in Malaysia. But there's the rain, there's no rain, there's this, there's that, and everything. So you have to be sensitive to longer days, shorter days. There is such thing as longer and shorter days in tropics even, but up north or up south, down south is even more pronounced. But you just have to be sensitive to everything. There are certain seasons where your plants won't thrive, they won't flower. So all that sort of thing you need to understand. But if you worked with it long enough, it becomes part of you. Oh yeah, this month you've got to do that. Or, well, it's December now, or it's June, and that's what the sort of thing you need. And when you see the plants eaten, then you say, oh, right, okay, it's eaten to this extent, it's okay, you can leave it, it will survive. Or, oh, it's terrible, the fungus have got it, and you have to destroy it. So everything is all these very, very sensitive relationship with nature and weather and seasons. That's what I mean by rhythm. Right? Well, I forgot I said that actually.
One little thing, I trained as an architect, and an InCh would tell me, architects are trained to make things stand up. They can't move around. They have to have a structure, but you can't say that to a plant. A plant will do what it wants to do. So you're thinking of something very, very different, and it will respond to the sun, it will respond to the wind, to the rain, and so on. But an architect doesn't have to take all that Well, an architect is doing something more static. It's rarely going to be able to move.
Yeah.
That's why I said architects deal with dead things and landscape people deal with live things. A brick is dead. Steel is dead. Well, it is, for all intents and purposes, dead. But if you're dealing with a tree, well, it's alive, and it's like us. Even the same species, you have different characteristics, and then you find, for example, somebody will tell you, "Oh, this thing can't live there because it's too dry," and you grow it, and it grows very well. But the next plant, if it dies, and the next plant might not want to live. So they also have personalities. It's not just like you're dealing with, there are two things. There are gardeners and landscape architects. Landscape architects tend to be like architects, and they're trained like architects. So that you put trees here, one tree in a row. You do your road, and then you do. Gardeners understand a lot deeper how the plants respond.
So curiously, do you talk to your plants or sing to them?
I don't sing to my plants. I sing a lot, but not to my plants. But I do relate to them. I do relate to them. If you deal with plants long enough, you know what they're trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Help! I'm dying.
So I have a few more questions, but I ask one last one before we open it to the member of the audience. Okay, so in 1995, you left your family business in Batu Pahat to reroute to Kuala Lumpur and started InchScape, Sdn Bhd. So with a young family, you're very brave, I would say. Do you have a plan when you did that?
Well, that's a very good question, because when I left penniless. It was 1998, where it was the worst Asian financial crisis, and I decided that I was going to leave. I couldn't bear it anymore. I'm not a businessman. I don't understand money, and I had to do something I liked. But having left and having to start working with penniless, I realized the value of money straight away. So I had to start from the beginning. I always say that Rebecca was, I'm very grateful to her, because she gave me one of my big breaks, right, with the Spice Garden, because the Spice Garden. And I've got, I've so many good friends that have supported me. I mean, Lawrence, for example, gave me a job, and every little bit helps. Otherwise, you aren't able to put food on the table. But particularly in the early days. Of course, now things are slightly better. I don't have to worry about putting at least 3 meals on the table, and the children are grown up, so that all that cost is gone. What was the question?
Okay. Do you have questions from the audience?
What was the question?
Do you have questions from the audience? We have a very quiet crowd.
I'm just curious. Did you both know each other very well before you started the book? Yeah, I just would like to know. Did you know each other very well before you started the book, or not?
Not very well. We didn't know each other very well. In fact, I can't even remember when I met you. But you tell me you'd met me sometime in Singapore. We had mutual friends in Singapore, taking soon, and so on. And no, we didn't know each other very well. I don't know why he asked me to do it, to be honest, except that there weren't many people writing monographs at that time. And I'd done one or two. So, yeah, I don't know why you chose me, but we got on quite well. There were times when we and knocking our heads together and we didn't agree about things. I think it's true of anybody writing a monograph. You've got to get attuned to what the way they think and the way, but it seemed to work out not too bad. Not too bad at all. Yeah.
Well, to answer your question, I still don't know him.
So why?
I saw him many years ago, and he had forgotten when I met him the second time with King Soon. I think it was maybe 50 million years ago. So it was so long ago that he didn't remember. And then I realized, he wrote 2 books where my work was featured.
That's 2 years.
Right? And the one is Terrace Transformation, and the other one's Tropical Houses or something, Asians. Tropical,
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
So I had 3 works in one of his books and 1 work in the other one. So I read it and I thought, oh, this guy, maybe he can write English. So I thought, that's what Englishman can write English. So I thought, should be okay now. No, actually, that's not true. I've read some of his books and they were nice. They were well written, very well written. And I must say that, in spite of the fact that we disagree on a number of things, I'm so grateful that he agreed to write the book. But for more the reasons than one, he more than just wrote the book. He was there pushing it along, helping me in all sorts of ways. And the thing about him is this, okay, the book must finish by December. And here I am going, we have another project to put it. No, more for days.
Yeah, that's true. And I insisted that because it was a book about gardens, you must give me the Latin name of every plant. And so you find the Latin name. It's what you must do for a gardening book, and for a book which has animals in it as well. It must be precise in that sense. And I think that was a good moment as well. Yeah. It is.
Can I ask, when you start designing a garden, what's your starting point? How do you?
Well, it depends on what's there. So there are 2 things that you start with. One is what's there, where are the roads, where are the views, what's there, is there a tree, is there a slope, so the contour, then the architecture, what does the architect plan, what sort of style is it, and so on and so forth. So the typology may matter, it may not matter, because we do all kinds of things. So we try to think outside the box, but that is the first step. What is there? What is there? What can we respond to? And the climate, because we do it everywhere. So the climate, this and that, and what we can respond. How, if there was a house, how the owner lives, and that's very important. The lifestyle. Do you dine outside? Do you like sitting by a pond? Do you hate water? Some people hate water. And then on top of that, it's always up to, I wish people would get their feng shui people in the beginning, because they know. You've designed this amazing garden. Oh, sorry, my feng shui master coming tomorrow. Hey, feng shui master say tree cannot be there, one cannot be there, this cannot be there. Hey, please, redesign. Then don't give it any more fees, right? Just redesign it. Easy one. Just move the tree there, move this here, move that there.
Okay, question. No more question?
Yes.
Okay.
Elida, I wonder, the photography is obviously absolutely integral to the making of the book and so on. I just wonder if Lin Ho maybe would say some words about the working process between the 2 of you as the 2 principals. Your gardens are very much about movement and connectivity and so on. And then we have the still photograph that tries to somehow capture all of that. I wonder, sorry to put you on the spot, would you say something about the working process?
I spoke with my picture. Oh, smart.
Well, it's quite an interesting project, I would say. I've been to the garden for a couple of times, and we watched how the whole place has evolved throughout the couple of months. We managed to capture different essence of the gardens from time to time, different time of day, and yeah, I think Elida, right? You also capture some of the nice images. Is it in the book? Is it? Yep. Okay. Yeah, pretty much. For me as a photographer, we basically just go and seek out this beauty that happens throughout the day and then capture it. That's all. And the beauty is created by InCh.
How we work together. Lin, you forgot that you came with me to China one year. And, you know, I was so impressed with his work. He does fantastic work. And I said, can you come to China with me? And you did. He agreed to come to China to photograph the bamboo thing, the Chinese, the nostalgic garden. And, you know, Lin Ho's got this amazing ability to capture the still shots, you know, and the angle that he uses to take the pictures are absolutely amazing. He knows exactly what angle. He waits for the light. He sits there for hours. And I'm trying to move him. Like, get out of the way. We need to build this garden. And he's there trying to photograph it very slowly. He's done a magnificent job on that particular garden. Do you remember that, Lin? Yeah, we had a very good time together then. Yeah. So
there's a difference between, there are some 12 show gardens in this book, and there's a difference between show gardens and gardens for real gardens for clients. The show gardens have to be perfect for 2 weeks. So your plants have got to be just right. They've got to be in bloom, and you have to get them just right for that show. Then they've gone. But the difference is for real gardens, they've got to be continuously thought about. And you can't always get the exact right moment to shoot them. You go to shoot them 1 week, they're not quite there. You go a month later and they're gone. You know, so there's actually photographing gardens is incredibly difficult. The show garden's easier in some ways than a real garden because you can't always judge precisely when it's going to be all in. Am I right? Yeah.
I used to look at all these English garden books, and you've got, you know, the Great Gardens of England, Great Dixter, whatever, Singhurst, and it always looks so beautiful. But, you know, you think, oh, that garden is always like that. But you go to the garden, and you know that they picked the very best day in summer to take that summer shot. And then in the winter, they will just pick a particular day where the sun is absolutely correct, and they'll take that shot. You look at this garden, and I used to admire these gardens, and thinking, oh my God, they got it perfect every day of the year. But when you do your own garden, you know, it's not like that. You know, there's rain one day, you know, you're going to photograph your, I don't know, your prize orchid. And the next day it rained and all the flowers are gone, or something like that. And this is what happens in real garden. I think this is what we talk about, that gardens teach us so many things, and one of which is that everything is ephemeral, particularly beauty. And I'm not talking about women, which it applies to as well. But some women look even more beautiful as they age, like Lin Lee. I mean, I'm so impressed at how beautiful she looks, and she never looks any day younger. Every time I see her, she looks more beautiful. Lawrence, you're a very lucky man.
I wasn't going to ask the question, but you're asking for it, right? No, actually, I remember what was called 12 Mile before as the Spice Garden. The name of the place was the Lone Crack.
Oh, yes, Lulu Craig.
Right. And the name died after you got hold of the place. It was
So-
never called the Lone Crack after that.
And,
And
you
so,
know, yeah,
am I asking? No, actually, I'm saying something nice about you.
yeah, God.
And so then you reminded me that uh, Rebecca had just wanted to create something there, and she mentioned your name. And then you took over the place and you created one of the best gardens in Penang. It still is, right? And so then you mentioned that that was one of the first jobs gave you the break, right?
Yeah.
So from what I can see, your trajectory has been fantastic. From that one garden, you have gone up to heaven and back, and while we poor architects still stand still. So my question to you is, why have you chosen this moment, right, to have this monologue about yourself? At first, because I've known you to be this very modest, very silent, very reticent person, but when we're alone, you never stop talking. No, why have you chosen this moment? Is it you're inspired by your, as Robert says, your early religious upbringing, which I believe there was. Once or twice you preached to me. But other than that, I mean, these are the little moments that actually I appreciate more. When Robert told the story about you. Why did you choose this moment?
You see, I was, what actually happened was that I had been producing these gardens, and I'm always, I don't really like to be in the limelight. You know me. I'm always trying to. I know, but I'm not one to seek the limelight. I think in a way, some of it sought me out. If you win unprecedented 4 medals in a show that's never happened before, it never happened again. People tend to be nice to you and tend to want to tell your story. If I were left alone, I'll just go back and do my own garden. But at some point in time, I realized that my work has become so much that it has to be put together before I die. And, of course, I need to tell my story to myself as much as telling the stories to somebody else. And also I realized that, of course, I never realized that my work had value to somebody else. It had a value, of course, enormous. But as I moved along, I realized that actually this work has value to other people. When I did that tsunami garden, I had the Japanese guy crying, like I said, coming and crying and looking at it, and it touched them. So I realized when I, that later on in life, I decided that, okay, it's time to put everything together because it was scattered everywhere. I couldn't find the picture. Part of the reason why it took so long is because Bob would say, what's about that picture then? And I'll say, oh, wow, let's go and look for it, right? And it took a long time to accumulate all these pictures because, all the past works. Even now, I haven't got pictures of certain work that I've done. But, at this age, I mean, how long do we have left to practice, right? I realized what had happened is that I'm now accumulating work. And I'm going, okay, that's the point we cut off, right? Because he keeps saying no more projects. Cannot put any more projects. One small picture, so he don't allow me. so, now the work is accumulating again, and I'm wondering whether, in 5 years' time or whatever, we need to publish a new book. But basically, at the end of the day, I realized that in Malaysia, there's nobody that's teaching anybody. I go to the university, I do lectures, I do prints, whatever. But unfortunately, there's nobody there to guide the younger people. So I want, and I want a book like that to inspire them and to be able to, and to tell them that I came into this at 45 years old, and it only took me 20 years. And it can happen to anybody.
I think just to add to that, writing a monograph, all the people I've written for, they come to a time in their life where they wanted to think, they wanted to express what they were doing. Willie Lim, No Limits, Taking Soon, tropical architecture, Ken Yang, the rethinking the skyscraper. All of them had reached a point in their life where they really had something to say, and they wanted to dig deep into themselves. It was a thinking exercise, and they could then it became useful for the next generation, I think. And I've been awfully fortunate to find the people have asked me to help them put it together, because it's quite difficult to do it yourself. Write an autobiography. You sometimes need someone to bounce ideas off.
So the next question before Bettina, when is yours, Lawrence? Your book. Okay.
Yeah. One question.
Bettina.
Okay, that's okay. Inch, can we pick up on your last point about wanting the future generations to have something to inspire them and to guide them? Can both you and Robert speak to why there is, in comparison to Europe and even Japan and China, there is a bit of a dearth of cultural appreciation and scholarship about Malaysian gardens? Yours really is. I've collected garden books for a long time. This is the first one I've seen on this country. This is the first time I've been able to look into Malaysian gardens in this country in a book form. I travel abroad. I go to the RHS gardens. I go to Wisley and Painswick. I make an effort to go to Kiffsgate. I've even snuck in to Highgrove and seen the way people are about gardens there. We have the great biodiversity you're talking about. We don't have the extreme climates in which we have to deal with snow and gardening in extreme weather. Why is it that on the public side, we seem incapable of creating beautiful gardens and maintaining them? Both of you.
Number one, I think the first thing you do is, let me tell you a story about me going to Pakistan. Last year, I was asked to go to Pakistan. And I said to the client, you get me a business class ticket and a 5-star hotel, and I'll go and look at your site, which I did. So I went along the highway one day, and I said, stop, I've got to the toilet. And I photographed the toilet because it was so clean. It was as clean as a Japanese toilet. Now, this is the story about maintenance. We don't have a maintenance culture, number one. Number two, I think historically, and I always say that, historically, the only garden we ever had before the British invasion, and by the way, I like the fact that the British invaded us, but, well, otherwise you wouldn't have Penang the way it is. Anyway, we had the Hindu culture, and the Hindu culture came from the Khmer culture. So if you look at, for example, I recently, thankfully, I went there immediately after COVID. You look at all the temples, and it's so based on the Hindu idea of Mount Meru. You've got the Sivalingam in every temple. You've got the water that's running. All that gardening style, which the Balinese seems to have absorbed, we have repudiated because we don't have. In Malaysia, we only have Islam, we have nothing else. We never had anything else. And this recent thing about 2,000 years ago, we sailed to Rome and our boats were bigger than, the Chinese, but 3 times bigger than Chinese junks. Our boats are bigger than the Portuguese boats. I mean, all that, obviously rubbish. But you see, and then we were truncated, and the whole civilization, thread of civilization, they seem to have gone to Sumatra, southern Sumatra and Java. And you see the Javanese, I've met some Javanese yesterday who tell me that they have no garden culture in Java, but I see that the gardening culture in Java is very ancient, because you see a garden, it actually proceeds out of the Shivalingam that they find in the forest. right? So they are sacred gardens. What happens with us is that we lost everything because actually all we had was the north, that was really the Patani Sultanate. Then we have the Malacca, which to me, I think maybe was a bit of a backwater. And we talk about huge palaces, which I'm not sure actually exist, but they're timber. And all that is not recorded. So we do not have a garden culture. We never had one. The British went really mad. Well, of course, you've got the Edwardian, and then you've got the Victorian, and then the cottage garden in the recent past. And they've developed from one to another, and they and they were so serious. They went around the world collecting plants, and they deposited them in the few botanic gardens, of which only one, and not Penang, has actually done well. I asked my friends in Bogor, I went to Peradeniya. Peradeniya is really badly looked after. You can see the signs, all the plant signs are wrong. You can't go there to learn anything. I think Penang still has our herbarium, which is quite good, but that is not gardening. And what had happened was the British came, and they were taking all these plants, they're depositing them in the gardens, and they're bringing them back to England. And they produced what was sort of capability brown type landscape, right? So you might find these big rain trees in a lawn, and distant views, that sort of thing, which, by the way, Geoffrey Bauer adopted and did so well. So that is the two reasons. One is that we have no history and we have no interest. I suppose now you're finding actually garden culture is more alive among the Malays than they are among the Chinese. Chinese, hey, no need just cement the floor enough already, right? So the Malays are collecting roses. There are people who grow roses. Actually grow quite a lot of roses, but the design is lacking. The ability to cultivate has become more and more common, but the design part is lacking. So, but you see, we are still stuck. I'm sorry, I'm saying too much. We're still stuck on this paper qualification. I had this girl working for me, and she was so good, and she was only part 1. And I said to her, she was going for a part 2 and in landscape. And I said to her, don't go and do a master's in landscape architecture. They can't teach you anything that you don't already know. If you've worked for me for 1 year, they can't teach you anything that you don't already know. I will get you placement in one of the great gardens in England. Go and spend a year there, and when you come back, you'll be indispensable to the industry. And I just went to see Chongket, for example. He can't find a single garden to work for him. And I said, you come back, you will be indispensable to the industry. You know what she did? She went to work in Singapore because they're paying her better. So, there's the number of factors that get us to this. But of course, I'm trying to reverse the trend by doing my own garden. And my garden will have to be the garden to end all gardens, because it teaches you all the lessons you need to learn about tropical gardening. Yeah.
Sorry, Robert, I just wanted to ask you, taking off from what you had just said about different architects asking you to do something on their works. Have you ever been in a position awkwardly when you've been asked to do a book or a paper on the work that you do not think deserves a book?
Yes.
No names need to be mentioned.
But I've been asked, and I've avoided it.
I just
I've
wondered
been
whether...
asked, and I've avoided it. I wouldn't write about anyone who I didn't think was contributing in some way, maybe their work is not 100% what I would go, but if I feel they're striving and they have a vision, then I would love to write about it, but not just to glorify something which is not, I wouldn't believe in myself. Yeah. And I believe in this guy. In this, yeah. So kind.
Inch. Hello.
Yes.
Can I just ask a question? Sorry, I'm not very knowledgeable about gardens, although I appreciate gardens. Would you share with us your view? What do you think of the Penang Botanical Garden?
You know, to avoid the question, I'll tell you I've never been there. But I think a lot can be done. I mean, a botanic garden is what it is. It is a collection of plants and displayed. And obviously, there are lots of things you can do to make it a lot better. But that's with everything in the world, isn't it?
Do we have one more last question? No. Okay, then I'll ask the last question then. Okay. If you were able to invent your ideal project to work on, what would it be?
Me?
Yeah.
I would like to have 100,000 acres of land that's completely protected forever and ever. I don't need a project. I just need 100,000 acres that is protected forever and ever. But there's no such thing as an ideal project. I mean, I love, everything in life that I've always wanted. When you're young, you say, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do a bungalow, I want to do this, I want to do that. But as you get, and you don't realize it, it creeps up on you. Whether you do something, then you've done something, then you've done that, you've done that, right? And you've really got to a point where you either have done everything that you want to do, or they're being offered to you right now, or you know that one day they'll be offered to you in the future. So, of course, depends on how much of a future you have. But I would like us to conserve more land, more things. And I think it's so important. We're losing our biodiversity, which means life itself will end if we lose our biodiversity.
All right. Shall we wrap?
Thank you for being a wonderful audience. It's been a great evening. I've enjoyed it.
So have I. Thank you so much.